بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم صلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم اللهم افتح علينا بحكمتك وانشر علينا برحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام يا عليم علمنا من علمك ما ترضى به عنا ولا تؤاخذنا بما تعلمه منا يا حليم خلقنا بخلق الحلم وحققنا بحقائق العلم سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. We spoke last week about we spoke in the last lesson about articulate speech as one of the essential qualities of the human being, and we will resume some of that in a minute. We will summarize some of that in a minute, but what I wanted to do was to return to that lesson and to finish it and then to begin the topic that we want to talk about tonight. Tawus, who is a great successor, the second generation after the Prophet ﷺ, he said, مَا عَقِلَ دِينَهُ مَنْ لَمْ يَحْفَظْ لِسَانَهُ. So he says that no person has an intellectual understanding of his religion who does not guard his tongue. So this is a beautiful statement, and of course it's very clear what it implies, that if we truly understand Islam, then we will pay attention to the tongue, and we will strive to guard our tongues and to use them as wisely and as carefully as possible. Al-Hasan al-Basri, may Allah be pleased with him, again he's one of the greatest of all the successors. He's of the same generation of Tawus. He said, the tongue of the believer stands behind his heart. The tongue of the believer obeys his heart. If he wants to say something, he reflects on it with his heart, then he lets his tongue say it. But the tongue of the hypocrite stands in front of his heart. That is, the heart obeys the tongue, the impulses of the tongue, which are generally generated by passions or by anger or by other impulses. If he is concerned about something, he lets his tongue say it and does not use his tongue to reflect on it. There's also a hadith that has the same meaning. So this is an extremely important principle, because it indicates to us not just that if we are intelligent people, that we should think before we speak. We should weigh the words that we use. But also that this is a characteristic of the true believer. So that makes it imperative for us. And according to the words of Al-Hasan al-Basri, the hypocrite is the person who doesn't do that. And so this is not something that we want to take lightly, and it's not something that we want to just think doesn't concern us, because we are not hypocrites, and we don't want to be hypocrites, but sometimes we can imitate their behavior, even without thinking about it. So again, to pay attention to the tongue. This is what most of us are not used to doing. We live in cultures where people speak a lot and they often don't think about what they say. And therefore, we take in that same culture. And for us to begin to make the change, to watch what we say, that's not easy to do. One of the things we'll see tonight is that it's important not to speak too much. Again, our cultures are not like that. Our cultures encourage us to speak a great deal. And yet, when we begin to reduce that speech, and not to speak so much, then it also becomes possible for us to put the tongue behind the heart and to think about what we say. Because obviously, if we're going to think about what we say, it slows us down. And if we're speaking like a rapper or a hip-hop artist, then we can't think about what we're saying, because it's just coming too fast. So it's very important to get control of that. We wanted to end that first lesson with a few words about samt, about silence. In Arabic, you talk about sukut and samt. And there is a difference between these words as I understand. So sakata is usually used when we speak and then we're silent. So sakata an kalam. And samt doesn't necessarily imply that. Samt might be of a person who hardly speaks at all. There's samit. Some of the ulama divide creation between natiq and samit. And here they use natiq in a general way. They don't use it to mean articulate speech, but they use it to refer to things like birds and human beings and whales and different kind of animals, that can speak, and of course jinn and angels and human beings. And then they refer to the samit, the things that never speak at all, like the tree, or like the mountain, or the other things that you can imagine for yourself. And that's actually a very pleasing distinction in my mind, because of the fact that when you say that we are conscious and we are animate, but that tree is not, is that really true? And how do you know? And it is not a required belief in Islam, but it is the belief of many ulama based on the Quran and Sunnah and reason, that God creates a world that is fully alive and that also glorifies Him. And you know that from the Quran. So even the atom glorifies Allah. Even the molecule and the cell and the tree. And therefore, we've called him samit, but not inanimate. I like that distinction very much. In any case, silence is extremely important. We say in English and we say in Arabic, silence is golden, speech is silver. Silver is not worth as much as gold. We say also in our spiritual tradition that silence is jam'a. Silence is gathering, because it brings everything together, brings thoughts together. And jam'a is quwwah, it's power. So there's power in silence. This is one of the reasons why often we don't feel comfortable when we're silent around people, and they don't feel comfortable either, because there's power that comes out of your silence. And they may feel that you don't like them. They may even perceive aggression, which is not there. But you have to remember that when you don't speak, you are powerful. When you speak, then this is what we call farq, separation. And separation is not strong. It's not like jam'a. So silence then is golden, and it is gatheredness, and it is power. And we want our speech to proceed from silence. And we have to remember also, one of the amazing things about the Quran is that the Quran is filled with silence. And what do I mean by that? The Quran is filled with taqdeer and hadf. Taqdeer is when you are supposed to put in your mind a word that is not said. For example, some of the Mufassirin would say that when you read Al-Fatiha, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Assalamu alaikum, MashaAllah, Assalamu alaikum, MashaAllah. What wonderful guests from Canada. MashaAllah, Barakallahu fikum. So they would say, يُقَدَّرُ أَمَامَهُ أَوْ قَبْلَهُ قُولُوا Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And hadf is when you take things out. but they're understood. If you study tafsir, you will see that there is taqdeer and hadf throughout the Quran. Allah says, وَآتَاكُم مِّن كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ, and He gave to you of all that you asked Him of. And one of the earliest tafsirs is that the Mufassirs understood that there was here mahdhuf, ellipsis. We say in English, ellipsis, something cut out. And that is, وَآتَاكُم مِّن كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ وَمَا لَمْ تَسْأَلُوهُ. And you have to understand, the Arabs understood that because taqdeer and hadh were essential parts of their speech. The Arabian speech of the Arabian people, the people of Arabia, before the Prophet ﷺ and at the time of the Prophet, is extremely important to study. Because they had a whole culture of ancient language. And in it, silence was very important. What you say and what you don't say, but you imply, and you don't need to say. So He gave you of everything you asked for, and it implies very clearly to the Sahaba and the Tabi'een, وَمَا لَمْ تَسْأَلُوا, and also what you didn't ask Him for. That to them follows naturally, so it doesn't even have to be said. That is a powerful silence. You ask God to give you success. You ask Him to give you a good job. You ask Him to give you all these things you can think of, right? But did you ask Him for a sun in the sky? For the moon? Did you ask Him for the seasons? Did you ask Him for plants that produce oxygen so that you can breathe? Because you give off carbon dioxide, and then they take that in and they turn it into oxygen. Did you ask for the alteration of the day and the night? All that was created for you. The sun and the sky and the moon. But you didn't ask for that. Most of the things that are essential to us, we don't even think of. So He gave you everything you asked. That's what we are most conscious of, and also the things you never asked for. Look at the lutf and the balagha that is in that. So the Quran itself is rooted in silence. It comes forth out of silence. The speech of the Prophet ﷺ is like that, and your speech should also be like that. Think. And silence is where you think. And silence pollinates the intellect, and it enables it to speak powerful words. So the Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Man samata naja. Whoever keeps silence will be safe. You'll be safe in this world. We talked last week about the king who said that whenever I say a word, it owns me. I can't take it back. I said this word and people heard it. Maybe it made me an enemy. Maybe it will harm me militarily. Maybe I gave away a secret. Now that owns me. But if I don't say the word, I own it. I'm still the king. That's true of a king, and it's also true of you and me. And how many words have we said that we wish we had never said? It's so important to guard the tongue. What destroys marriage more than the tongue? It ruins our relationships. And for many of us, when we get angry, it's almost impossible to control our tongues. But then we say words we wish we had never said. And then what can you do about that? You've said, and if your spouse is saying words that hurt you, aren't you going to look for words that hurt them more? That's the way most of us are. And so we rip each other to shreds. In English, we have a saying. They used to say this when we were children. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. That's not true. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but I'll get better. But words, maybe I'll never forget them for the rest of my life. And this is why we have to be really careful about how we use this two-edged sword. And a father can say to his son words that he says probably in anger, and the son may never forget those for all of his life. And the father may not even remember that he said that the next day. The same, of course, can be true of a mother. So we have to be very careful. Teachers as well. Sometimes teachers, especially teachers that are not well trained and that don't have dignity and good character, they say cruel words to students. You know, Malcolm X, who is a famous African American, I became a Muslim, thank God, because of Malcolm X. We learn how to speak well, we learn how to pause. If you're not trained and you're speaking, and especially if you're nervous, then you just talk. Let me get rid of this, get finished, be done, and I can rest, get off the stage. But that actually makes the speech of little value and maybe makes it unintelligible. Whereas if you just take it easy, think about what you're saying, remember the words that you wrote down, what do they mean? And you get that meaning in your heart. And then you say it, and then you stop and think about it. No one's going to boo. In fact, they will listen, because you're not speaking. So silence is very important. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Man sarrahu an yaslam, falyalzim as-samt." Whoever would be made happy by being safe in this world and in the next world, on the last day, let him keep silence. So we all read these hadith, we know these hadith, but we have to take them carefully. And as Tawus said, "Man aqila dinahu, ma aqila dinahu, man lam yahfaz lisanahu." That person has no understanding of his religion, no intellectual perception of this great deen, who doesn't guard his tongue. May Allah wake us up to this. The Prophet said, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Ana ukhbirukum bi aysar al-ibadati wa ahwaniha ala al-badan as-samtu wa husnul khuluq." This hadith is transmitted by good transmitters. Rawahu thiqat kama yaqulun. The Prophet said, "Shall I not inform you of the easiest type of worship and the most convenient to the body? Keeping silence and having good character." May we all do that. You know, keeping silence is an act of worship, because you're guarding your intellect, you're guarding your heart. You're also paying attention to other people, that this thing that I want to say, will it benefit you really? Or may it harm you? So this is an act of worship. This, and then husnul khuluq. And this kind of samt, this kind of silence, is an act of husnul khuluq. The Prophet said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in the famous hadith in Bukhari and Muslim and others, which you all know, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir, falyaqul khayran aw liyaskut." So he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whoever believes in God and the last day, let him speak good or be quiet. He said, رحم الله عبدا تكلم فغنم أو سكت فسلم. May God show mercy, special mercy, to a servant, a person who speaks and wins great bounty. For example, you do dhikr, or keep silent and is safe. And one of the questions we had from our sister Dara in the last lesson is, how do you learn to keep silent? And she brought up the question that if I have a problem with eating, good character begins in the stomach. We don't like to hear that, do we? Because we love to eat, we love to drink, you know, but good character begins in the stomach by being able to control what we eat, control what we drink. It's also good for our health. So she said that we can fast and we can control the way we eat. It helps us anyway. May help us with weight and with other things. So what do you do about speech? And actually there is a special type of fasting that pertains to speech, and that's called dhikr. Dhikr is the fast of the tongue. It's not technically speaking a fast, but you preoccupy your tongue with dhikr. And then it means you're not saying other things. You're saying things that are very beneficial. One of the good things about the fast of dhikr is that you can break it without breaking it. Because if I'm fasting the fast of food and drink, I can't eat or drink until the sun sets. But if I'm doing dhikr, and somebody comes and asks me a question, you can answer them. It didn't break your fast. So dhikr is very important. It is the remedy to all of the defects of speech. You know, to make our tongues ratib, to make our tongues moist with the dhikr of Allah Azza wa Jal. The Salaf, may Allah be pleased with them, they would say, الصمت يجمع للرجل فضيلتين السلامة في دينه والفهم عن صاحبه. These people, and look at the speech of these people. Look at the speech of the Blessed Prophet, and look at the speech of the Salaf. You know, usually their words are like 5 or 10 words. They don't go on and on. And this is again because they are people who think carefully. They ponder things. And that's why you ask them a question. And they give you an incredible answer. And you wonder, but I can't do that. No, that's because I don't think. I don't ponder. They're always thinking. They're always pondering. The issue of al-qada and qadr and free will. This became a major issue in the Khilafah of Al-Imam Ali radiyallahu anhu wa karramallahu wajhahu. And a man came to ask him about the qadr. Are we free to do or not free to do? And his answer is better than the answer of how many theologians, even though Allah bless them, they do a good job on this issue in my opinion. But he said, Al-amru bayn al-bayn. Al-amru bayn al-bayn. The reality of this matter is between two extremes. Al-amru bayn al-bayn. La jabra wa la tafwid. Wa la ikraha wa la tasliq. So he said, there's no jabr, there's no compulsion. You are not made to sin. You are not made to disobey. I don't want to disobey, but God made me do that. That's kufr. La jabr, wa la tafwid. Nor is the matter turned over you to completely. You don't create your action. Wa la ikrah, and you're not made to do the thing you don't want to do. I don't want to do this, but God makes you do it. Wa la tasliq, nor are you given power, sultan, complete power over the acts you do. Al-amru bayn al-bayn. That to me is one of the most intelligent and perceptive of all answers. I don't think you can do better than that. And it shows supreme intellect. And it shows supreme spiritual understanding. And it's speaking to all people. Because when we talk about free will theologically, we will have a hard time not losing most of the people who listen. They won't be able to follow because it's a sir, it's a secret. So Imam Ali has words that everyone can relate to, from the most simple to the most advanced, the most educated to the most uneducated. This is all, you know, these are all beautiful examples, you know, of how great these people were. And again, الصمت يجمع للرجل فضيلتين السلامة في دينه والفهم عن صاحبه. How beautiful. He says that samt, keeping silence, brings together for a person two fadilas, two excellent qualities. Salama, which is the state of well-being and safety and goodness in his religion, your religion is sound. And the ability to understand his companion. So this is, and this also shows, like, I can't have good character if I don't care about you. I can't have good character if I don't try to understand you. As we said last time, good character is being humble and being convinced that you are not better than other people, that you have no claim to say you're better than other people, no matter how great you are. And then it's to look up to other people. So how can I do that if I don't even know what they think? And again, if we're silent, then we listen to them speak. And then maybe we come to understand them. Now, dhikr is, as we said, one of the greatest gifts to minimizing speech. Dhikr, of course, is not silence, but dhikr is what enables us to get our speech under control. And it's extremely important. But here again, the dhikr itself needs to come out of the heart. And this is the reason why many of us, and this can be a problem that even as people who love dhikr, that we suffer from for decades, is we do lots of dhikr, subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, but we don't think about it. The tongue is just turning and turning and turning, and the heart is not putting anything into that. So you have to have that silent quality, which is the processing of the heart, which then feeds into the dhikr, so that you know what you're saying. Subhanallah, God has no defect. Walhamdulillah, He's worthy of all praise. He has the praiseworthy attributes for what He's done for you, what He's done for us, what He's done for everything. Wa la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, and God is the necessary being. Everything is like nothing compared to Him. Okay, so that kind of thinking process, we call that in Arabic dhukr. Dhukr in Arabic is thought. It's like dhikr. And dhikr, that's why if you say tadhakkaru, the commentator may say, is tadhakkaru huna min al-dhikr or min al-dhukr? If it's from dhikr, it means to remember, to make remembrance. If it's from dhukr, it means to reflect and to think. But you see here in the Arabic language how these two qualities of dhikr and fikr, they go together even in the same word. Dhikr is the remembrance, but dhukr is the remembrance with understanding and with reflection. So dhikr then, even though it is a type of speech, and of course we have dhikr that is aloud, subhanallah, walhamdulillah, wa la ilaha illallah, wallahu akbar, and we have dhikr khafi, subhanallah. The dhikr that's khafi, some people prefer it. Both are good. Some people prefer it because of its closeness to the heart. And also because of the fact that it's more likely to protect us from things like hypocrisy and ostentation. But all of them are good, and all of them have their place. But again, when we have this calamity, which probably all of us suffer from, of doing dhikr, the things we remember, the things we memorize, but I'm not thinking about it, then one of the ways to remedy that is to get the dhikr as silent as you can, so that you don't even hear yourself, and then you hear the meaning, and then it comes to life. Okay, so dhikr then is essential to this process, but also solitude is good. Solitude makes keeping silence easier. And we don't want to be antisocial people. we love to be with each other. But it's good also, even if you're a busy person, like an executive in a company, or a person that's in a family with lots of children. You've got lots of things to do. You don't have free time. But it's good to try to find yourself a time when you can be by yourself. Because that solitude will restore you. And that solitude enables you to get everything together. And that solitude also enables you, to keep silence and to think about what you're doing. So solitude is extremely important. And keeping silence in this way, keeping silence positively, it pollinates your intellect. يلقح العقل. It makes the intellect fertile so that the intellect can produce beneficial things. And that's exactly what we're seeing in these beautiful words. ما عقل دينه من لم يحفظ لسانه. Okay, can you say it better than that? I certainly can. But these are the words of a man, Tawus al-Yamani, Allah be pleased with him, who is thinking all the time. This is the way the Sahaba were. This is the way the successors were. This is why they were such amazing people. And therefore, their intellects are fertile. And when they speak, they have really beautiful things to say, and things that people can understand, and things that can be memorized easily. Just a few words, and things that can come down to us in history because of that. Imam al-Awza'i, may Allah be pleased with him, is one of the great successors of the successors, contemporary Imam Malik and Imam Abu Hanifa, al-Layth ibn Sa'ad, and others. He's also one of the great authorities for Umar ibn Abdul-Aziz as a caliph. Imam Malik is an authority for Umar ibn Abdul-Aziz as an emir, because Umar lived in Medina, and he was the emir of Medina. But when he goes to Damascus to be the caliph, then that's the land of al-Awza'i. So he becomes one of the major transmitters from Umar as a caliph. And he said that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz wrote to all of us, the ulama, and to the governors, and to everyone. And he says, Amma ba'd, as for what follows, imagine, they couldn't even find Muslims to take zakat, because the wealth had become so extensive. And in fact, that wealth, that's a very important thing in European history, because the tremendous wealth of the Muslim world under the Khulafa and then under the Umayyads, this was a major aspect of attaching the world to the Muslims. And in fact, in Europe, it brought about economic depression in the far north, in Scandinavia, in what is today England and Holland and Germany, because they used to have something like رحلة الشتاء والصيف, the journey of the summer and the winter. But when Islam appears in Portugal and Spain and Sicily and the islands and North Africa, and you have a world market that is open and is flourishing like you cannot imagine, then there was tremendous wealth. Man ahya ardan nawatan fahiya lah. Whoever brings fallow land to life owns it. And what did that do? It destroyed feudalism. It destroyed feudalism in Sicily and in Europe. And it liberated the peasants, because whoever brings fallow land to life, that applies also to the dhimmi, to the Christian or Jew who's under Muslim rule. And they were the majority. So now all the fallow lands that before that belonged to the feudal lords, you bring it to life and it's yours, and you didn't pay a penny. And this also brings about a huge economic development. So there was a lot of wealth. And Umar, as the Imam, he's very concerned about that. So he says, whoever calls death frequently to mind will be content with little in this world. He's not saying that because the people are poor and he wants them to be happy with their poverty. He's saying that because the people are wealthy and he wants them to be liberated from their wealth and to be content with little. And then he said, radiyallahu anhu, whoever regards his speech as part of his amal, of his action, his voluntary acts that he will be rewarded or punished for, his speech will be little, except in what concerns him. What beautiful words. And again, this is a letter that Umar ibn Abdul Aziz dictates to be sent around the caliphate. How many sentences? 2. Amazing. And profound wisdom for all times. So, words, as we said, are light on the tongue. For the good person, even for the bad person, there's certain words that it's difficult to speak in the beginning. And, this is well known. There's certain things you can't say in the beginning, but then if you do say them, then they become easy to say. And I'm not going to say that that world was ideal, because it certainly wasn't. But we had a lot of standards that would be destroyed after that. And one of them was that there's certain things you never say. You wouldn't dream of saying. And when you come to the 1970s and 1980s and 1990s, you can see how some of these unspeakable words are introduced into the common speech through comedy, through movies, through other things. And then a lot of them, people say them and they don't even think about them. When I came back to the United States in 2000, and I had been abroad for 18 years, I was shocked by the things I heard. And people, good people, Muslims, practicing Muslims, were saying words that you could have never said, in the 1950s or even into the early 1960s. So this is part of the degradation of language, and this brings about harm. We have to be careful what we say. We have to be careful about the way we speak. So words become light on the tongue. And the thing that we couldn't say in the beginning, then it becomes easier every time we say it. It doesn't have physical weight, it has moral weight. And words, as we said, they seem to disappear into thin air. Okay, but that's not what happens, because the words you say are written down. They are recorded, and they are concrete, and they have weight or they have lightness. This is what we believe, and this is a cosmic truth. So we have to be mindful of that. They will come back either to please us or to haunt us. We have the habit not to regard our words as actions, right? The sadaqah you're going to give, you're going to Jumu'ah, maybe you have, 10 junay that you're going to give as sadaqah. Okay, that's an action, and you're thinking about it, and you put the money in your pocket or your purse. Okay, and that's an amal, and you want to be rewarded. But every word you say is like that. And we have to also think of them in the same light. We must regard everything we say, everything we write, the emails we send, the text messages we send, as actions, as moral actions that we will be rewarded for or judged for. They're all speech. And they all come under the heading of what we call the tongue. All right, so now we want to go to tonight's lesson, and we're probably already almost out of time. But we won't worry about that, inshallah, if you don't worry about that. So In this last lesson, then, we talked about the fact that we are speech creatures. And we talked about the gift of articulate speech, al-bayan, careful speech, speech with dignity. This is what makes us distinctive. And we saw that language, the gift of speech, is the medium between us and between boundless types of beneficial knowledge. It is also the medium or the means, the wasila, the sabab, between us and our Lord, between us and true worship, and tawbah, and other things. We mentioned that animals can communicate. Bees communicate. Ants communicate. How they do that is a marvel. It's a miracle. The dog can communicate to you. When the dog puts back his ears, you better be careful, because he's ready to attack. When the dog puts up his ears, he is not going to attack. Okay, if the elephant puts his ears to the side, it means he's going to attack. If his ears are out, he's not going to attack. So these things, whether they're actually communication or they're just behavioral, animals have those qualities. And certainly animals can communicate certain things. One of the amazing things in the Muslim world, and even in Cairo this was true, before the French came here, in Cairo and in Istanbul, you had dogs in the street, the purpose of which was to get rid of the garbage, because the garbage was organic. And these dogs were actually good dogs. And these dogs would also bark if there was a fire. And they would also protect things. Istanbul, and really these dogs, there are people write about them. They were very amazing. When the French came, one of the things they did was kill the dogs. And maybe they did that because of hygiene. I don't know why they did that. But they killed the dogs, which is, again, in this world, is the paradise of the animals. And you can't just kill dogs. You know, you can't just kill cats. They have rights, but that's an interesting thing. Many people wouldn't even imagine that. And they talk a lot about these dogs, because if there's a fire, they begin to bark. The people know. And then they clean up the garbage, they get rid of the rats, they do other things. Bayan, articulate speech, though this is the special gift that you have. And the jinn have this, and the angels have this. And this makes us like the angels if we use it properly. God taught us bayan. Bayan deserves to be used properly. You can use your bayan to clarify the truth, to teach your children, to teach your friends. You can use it for so many beneficial things. But also we can use bayan to cut each other to bits. Right? Our tongues. And this is what we do a lot. We have to be really careful about that too. Because many times when we speak, especially if someone says something we don't like, or a person we're not comfortable with, we have to be very careful when we speak that we're not trying to hurt them. And if you think about that, I'm sure you can think of lots of examples. But we do that, and that's why, why am I going to say these words? I might want to talk about the way they're dressed, but not going to tell them, so I'm going to talk about people that dress that way. Really, because I don't like what they're doing. Don't like the way they're dressed. So this is why, whenever you speak, is what you say true or false? You shouldn't lie. And then, will it hurt? Will it cause damage? Because then you shouldn't say it. We don't use our words to hurt, unless we're at war with an enemy and we want to use words to harm them. Many Muslim people, when they would go to battle, they would first fight with poetry. And I know great kings in East Africa in particular, who the king will come out and speak in powerful poetry in Ethiopic or in Tigray. These are all Semitic tongues, by the way. And he will challenge the other king, and he will tear him to shreds. with his tongue before the battle. And then often they have mubaraza. Why should you kill my army? Why should you kill my village? See if you can kill me. I'm a king, you're a king. That's, of course, the way men are. People that are brave. Mashallah, it's like, let's have one-on-one combat. There's no need to kill the army. Again, the real warrior is a man. The real warrior is sinless, not a murderer or a killer. And this is also part of tradition. If you want to be a warrior on the battlefield, a hero on the battlefield, then you've got to be good to children. You've got to be good to women. You've got to be good to animals. You don't go around killing people. And then you'll have power also. So, all right. Also, we've talked about the fact that, oh my goodness, we didn't even get started. Also that there is no limit to the good the tongue can bring you and to bring others. And there is no limit to the harm the tongue can bring. Who are the best people? Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that the best people are mafatihul khayr, maghaliq al-shar. They are people who are keys to open up good and locks to lock down evil. And who are the worst of all people? Mafatihul shar, maghaliq al-khayr. The people who are keys to open up evil and locks to lock down good. Again, if we want to look at our world today, in my country or in other countries, you can see, especially over these last decades, how all the doors of evil have been opened up wide. And the doors of good are being shut down. And we want to change that. And our tongues will be one of the main ways that we do that. Although we have to act well, we have to do good things, we have to establish credibility, but we want to use these tongues as keys to open up the good so that people can understand, and as locks to lock down evil. Rumi says, when he talks about the unlimited good of words, that since you cannot bear God's unveiled light, drink in the words of wisdom He has revealed, for their light is veiled. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Do you realize how much light is in that? Do you realize how much infinite knowledge is in that? Because truly there is. Okay, but it's veiled. It releases itself in various degrees according to the purity of your heart, according to the knowledge that you have. The more knowledge you get and are capable of, the more the Quran speaks to you. So this is one of the wonders of the words, that contain this infinite light, but they give you what you can take. As a rule, this relatively lightweight tongue that we have, it's not hard to use. If we walk a long distance, we get tired. If we stand too long, we get tired. We can talk all day, right? They are the most disobedient and harmful of all our organs and all of the activities we do. So we have to wake up to that. We have to pay attention. They are so easy to use, so natural to abuse, and so hard to control. And therefore they are Satan's most effective tool against us. So tonight we wanted to talk, I think time is almost finished, but we wanted to talk about speaking only about what concerns us and avoiding superfluous or excessive talk. So Imam al-Ghazali, may Allah be pleased with him, after this introduction, he begins to talk about various harms that are common to the tongue. And he speaks about 20 in particular. but he grades them, and he begins with the ones which are the most innocent, and the ones which are the least serious. And those are these two. You know, when we speak about what is not our concern, that's not strictly haram by any means. But min husni Islam al-mar'i tarkuhu ma la ya'ni. Part of the good Islam of a person is that he or she puts aside the things that don't concern them. So therefore also when we speak, we don't want to speak about things that don't concern us, that are not our business. We want to talk about the things that do concern us. It concerns you, for example, that your children are properly educated. It concerns you that they're properly taught. It concerns you, that you get knowledge and that you spread knowledge and so many other things. That's what you should talk about. And then avoiding superfluous talk, excessive talk, which in Arabic we call al-fudul min al-kalam. Kalam that is not necessary. And that's not a sin. And in fact, we do it all the time. But again, Imam al-Ghazali is saying that if we want to go through the wake-up process by which we use the tongue carefully and cultivate silence as something golden, gatheredness and power that pollinates the intellect, then we want to focus on this. And this is also because this is one of the easiest things to avoid once we wake up to it. And so it's a good beginning place. So we mentioned last week that if you want to learn how to run, you want to learn how to swim, and you can think of 1,000 examples. We human beings always have to be taught. We're cultural creatures. So we come into this world knowing nothing. You can take the little duckling and put him in the water, and he knows how to swim just like that. That's innate, and you don't have to tell him that, no, don't paddle that way, paddle this way. He knows exactly how to paddle. But we have to learn everything. We have to learn even how to walk. We have to learn, even many of us, we don't walk correctly. We walk in ways that are not good for our posture, not good for our spine. And if we want to run, most of us, we can't run naturally. We have to be taught how to put our weight, how to lean forward, how to move our arms, and all these things. And of course, when we learn that, and we're coached and we're watched, then we can become really good runners. We can run much faster. You could never be an Olympic runner, no matter how fast you are, if you don't have an Olympic coach. You've got to have a coach who can train you so that you can achieve your potential. And the same is true about everything, and especially about our hearts and about our tongues. This is why Imam al-Ghazali is telling us these things, so it's part of our training. And then we can begin to work on that. We can become conscious of it. So that's why in all these lessons, this is part of that training process, just like learning how to stand. Most people stand improperly. To stand properly, you should bend your knees just a little bit. Then you can stand for hours. And also you will be firmly planted, and you won't cut off your circulation. Most of us don't do that. So this is part of the training. But now when we talk about superfluous speech, and we talk about speaking about things that don't concern us, well, people always do that. It's a very common human trait. But we live in an age of the talk show. We live in an age where talk is entertainment. And people come and talk and talk and talk, and they lean back and they laugh and they talk and they talk. And at best, what they say is superfluous. It may be what does not concern them. And in many cases, it's not at that level. It's even haram. And of course, in the United States, we have big people on talk shows like Maher, who is like making it, and he's liberal, and he's highly regarded, and he's very intelligent, and he's very sarcastic, and he has been attacking Islam in the most bestial way, and with no fairness whatsoever. So this is extremely harmful. And so we live in the age of the talk show, and we live in an age in which talk is a fundamental type of entertainment. In the black community in the United States, blacks would talk about rapping. And I remember that. I remember that before they ever had rappers. But rapping is to be able to talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. And of course, to get people's attention, and also ultimately to convince them, and maybe to do something. Like, might be to sell drugs, it might be to do something good, but you have the rap artist. And then of course you have the development of rap as an artistic form, and of hip hop, which is closely related to that. And of course, it's just talk, 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 talk. In many cases, that talk is not superfluous and not what doesn't concern us, but in fact, totally haram. And commercial hip hop is extremely destructive. And it's not just destructive to the blacks, it's also destructive to everybody else. My father's family comes from the sand hills of northwestern Nebraska, which is a beautiful place to go. There are not many people there. They have buffalo and they have antelope, and it's very pretty. But I went to visit Broken Bow, which is where my grandfather grew up. And Broken Bow is about as far in the sticks as you can get, and still be around human beings. And this young white boy was driving his pickup down the street with hip-hop coming out of the windows. African-American hip-hop. So it's even there in Broken Bow. That's why I told some of our Muslim hip-hop artists that, you can work in Chicago, you can work in Detroit, you can work in other cities. Why don't you come with me to Broken Bow? Maybe we'll convert the people. So the hip-hop artist has got to be careful, and they are, many of them, Muslim hip-hop artists, that his speech or her speech is carefully put together so that although they're always talking, it's really good, it's really beneficial, and it guides people to Islam or to the truth. Okay, but this is why superfluous talk is something we have to really pay attention to. And as we said before, our cultures, Egyptian culture or American culture, are similar in the sense that both of them are very talkative. And in the United States, if you don't talk, most people will interpret that as hidden aggression, that you don't like them. And that's unfortunate for us, because that shouldn't be the case. Even if we're around each other, and we are brothers and sisters, but if we don't talk, and we're thinking, or we're doing silent dhikr, we feel sometimes uncomfortable that I need to say something, because otherwise people are going to think that we don't like them, that we don't want them to be with us. So in cases like that, it is important to talk. And that talk is not just entertainment, that talk is good character, so that we release any kind of anxieties that are there. Also, when people have had big problems among them, arguments, disagreements, maybe they've been enemies for whatever reason, and you finally brought them together, it's very important to be able to smile, and it's very important to be able to say things that are light and to joke, to remove that tension that is underneath that could easily lead to disagreements again. So, in any case, we live in a time when it's very important for us, to be conscious of the temptation we have just to entertain ourselves with talk. And again, like we want to talk, we want our guests to be happy, but we want to make sure that we don't go to excesses in that, and we want to make sure also that whatever we say is very beneficial. I think that what we'll do here is stop. Time is up, isn't it? And we'll come back to this next time. So that means that we might be able to get through the lesson next time, inshallah. And this is a really important lesson, so I think that that's a good thing to do, so that we can focus on it very much. Bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. And now, inshallah, we'll take the next 30 minutes to hear your questions. Sidi Hisham.
Towards the end of your talk, you mentioned leaving that which doesn't concern us. We often have people telling us that we shouldn't speak about certain things because they don't concern us. They're often used as excuses to avoid accountability. How do we know when something does or does not concern us according to the standards of our religion, so that we don't fall into one extreme or the other?
Allah bless you, but I think if we had a referee, he would say, he would maybe fault that question because we didn't talk about superfluous speech yet, and we didn't talk about what doesn't concern us. And if you would be so kind as to wait till the next lesson after we've done that, then it might become clear in the course of the lesson. And otherwise, we'll try to do the best we can. It's a very good question, but I would prefer very much that we take the lesson first, inshallah. Okay, Dawah. No really difficult questions.
I was hoping you could just elaborate on the link between silence and having the Quran speak to us.
What do you mean?
During the debts, you were speaking about silence and the importance of silence and the importance of watching the speech, and how the Quran is the speech of Allah, and that somehow there was a link between having the Quran speak to you and watching what we say. Sort of a link between Kalam Allah and our speech.
So maybe we could just go back to talk about that again to make sure that it's clear. Because it may not be clear to us, and I may not have said it in a way that can be understood. What I wanted to say is that the Quran emerges from silence, and the Quran also has in it a silent Quran that goes from the very beginning to the very end. And what I meant by that is that the Quran has the mantuf. Okay, and these are the verses, the beautiful verses that we all memorize and that we read and that we know. But when we study the Quran, we do tafsir, then we know that there is the phenomenon of taqdeer. Taqdeer is when you are supposed to estimate in your mind what was not said, but is implied. And it is so clearly implied that it need not be said. And there are many examples of that, but one of them is Al-Fatiha itself. If you look in Jalalain, the tafsir says at the very beginning, before Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, ما معناه وقدر في أوله قولوا. Okay, that we estimate at the beginning of this, we do taqdeer of say all of you, so that إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين then fits in. What he means to say is this is the way that the Sahaba Ridwanullahi alayhim would have understood it. Tafsir al-Jalalain is always bil mashhur. It's always very standard central opinions. And of course you don't have to agree on that, and you don't have to do that taqdeer, but this, in my opinion, is such an important part of understanding the eloquence of the Quran. And then we have also hadf. Hadith is ellipsis. It's when the Quran cuts out something, which again is understood, so it doesn't need to be said. And when it is cut out, then it becomes very, very eloquent. And there are many examples, but the example I gave was وَآتَاكُمْ مِنْ كُلِّ مَا سَأَلْتُمُوهُ, that God gave you of everything that you asked for. He gave you something of everything you ever asked for. Okay, but the hadith here is وَمَا لَمْ تَسْأَلُوهُ. And you'll find that in the tafsir. And he also gave you of everything you didn't ask for. You didn't ask for this world. You didn't ask for the creation of the continents. You didn't ask for Egypt to have a Nile, which changes history. If there were no Nile in Egypt, world history would have been utterly different. It's one of the most important facts in the history of the world. The Nile in Egypt. I mean, that's not an exaggeration in any term. Whoever asked for that? Allah did that, perfectly. So, the Quran then is the revealed Quran of the Mantuk. No question about that, how beautiful it is. But what we also know when we study tafsir is that there is a Quran غير منطوق. There is a Quran that's not spoken, which is understood by taqdeer and by hifz. Qaf wal Quran al-Majid bal ajibu. Okay, so here there is hadith. How do you know? Bal. Qaf, by the letter Qaf. Wal Quran al-Majid, by the glorious Quran. Okay, so there's mahdhuf. What is it? Well, it could be that they have disbelieved in you. You, the Prophet Muhammad, the Amin, the greatest of all people, who's known to be Sadiq, who's known to be Amin. Who could ever believe they would disbelieve in you? بَلْ عَجِبُوا أَنْ جَاءَهُمْ إِلَى آخِرِهِ. Okay, so the Quran is filled with that. And this is why also in our speech, it's very important that our speech emerge from silence. And if your tongue is behind your heart, it will. Your heart is the abode of that rich silence, that intellect, that spirit, that pollinates the intellect and that makes the tongue eloquent. May Allah give us this gift. Again, as we said last time, one of the greatest gifts of paradise is speech. And in paradise there's no lahu, there's no laghiya, there's no ta'thim. None of the speech is ever speech that is void of meaning, that is meaningless, that is abath. It's not ta'thim. Ta'thim is speech that makes people do things wrong. None of that. So one of the greatest things that we will enjoy in paradise, may we all be there together, is talking to each other. But we won't speak like we're speaking now. We will speak like the greatest of the awliya, because we will know so much. And you will have understood all history. Even this time we live in right now, which is an extremely difficult time. One of the hardest times that I can imagine. And it's like, will Islam survive? Yes, it will. Absolutely. No question. Okay? And may we be means to do that. When things become really dark, then the light shines very brightly. So we have confidence and we have to work hard. We have to be wise. We have to be good. Okay? But we'll understand why that all happened. And we will be thankful for everything that happened, even the really horrible things that we don't even mention today, or that we can hardly mention. What happened to the Bosnian people? What happened to the Chechens? What happened to the Syrians? What happened to the Burmese? And we could go on and on. What happened to the Chinese Muslims? Islam came to China from the days of the Prophet or the Sahaba. And Islam was a fundamental part of China, and still is. And China regarded Islam as a Chinese religion. I wrote a paper called Seek Knowledge in China, Thinking Beyond the Abrahamic Box. If you'd like to know a little bit about the amazing history of Islam in China, you can find that paper on the internet. Okay, but in the 19th century, things went really bad for the Muslims in China. Maybe 20 million were massacred. Maybe 20 million. Millions of them were massacred. Some say 20 million. Okay, so we have been through hell many times in our history. But we're strong ummah. And we are the ummah of the Blessed One, the Beloved. And we will win in the end. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. And all of these innovations, all of these heresies, the takfiris and others, this will pass. And the truth will come back, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. We should be confident of that. We have to be intelligent. We have to work towards that. May we make good use of our lives, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. But you have a strong heart, and do dhikr, remember Allah, and pray, and keep good company. I believe this is very good company. This is how we strengthen each other, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. Anyway, that was really a long answer for a very short question.
One question regarding yesterday's session. It's about Arabic as well. So, my understanding, I always took it for granted then that when Allah says kun, with the Arabic letters kaf and noon, that the Arabic language is the binary code of all existence. That when He says Ya Adam, He is speaking to him in Arabic as well. So I'm not sure if this is the truth or not, and I would like you to either confirm it or explain what is the language of
one of the things we believe in Islam is that God's uncreated speech, which is His attribute, we call it al-kalamun nafsi, is not words and not letters, and it's not temporal, it's not in time, and it is absolutely unitary. This is the uncreated speech. And that unitary speech reveals and it points to everything in God's unitary knowledge. Because God knows everything. Everything that is and everything that is not. Everything that He willed to be and everything He willed not to be. Do you have a twin? No. But what if you had a twin? Allah knew what the world would be like if you had a twin. What if all of us looked the same, like sheep? Because there are many types of sheep that unless you are a shepherd who knows those sheep, you can't tell any difference between them. To us, they all look the same. What if we were all like that? And Allah knows that possibility also. This is the reason why we say, لَيْسَ فِي الْإِمْكَانِ خَيْرٌ مِمَّا كَانَ. This is the best of all possible worlds. It doesn't mean that what happened in Libya, and is happening in Syria, and is happening in Iraq, and other places, including the difficulties in this blessed country, that these are good and these are wonderful. No. They are a strong test, a difficult test. May Allah give us the success to come to the shores of Aman and Aman. Okay? But laysa fil imkani khayrun mimma kan. Because everything that happens, even if it's bad, it is part of God's infinite knowledge and wisdom. And on the Day of Judgment, you will see the wisdom in that. Even though now, we can't imagine what good would be in this. So this is very important. We have to, know that. But the speech of God is not a particular language. That's why when we talk about the revealed speech of God that is given to prophets and messengers, we don't say that it is any particular language. So when God spoke to Moses, it was in the language of Moses. That may have been Hebrew, like is in the Bible, And that Hebrew may have been different because Hebrew's gone through lots of changes. So we don't know for sure. Jesus, we don't even know what language he spoke. Did you know that? Okay. Did he speak Aramaic? Most people say he spoke Aramaic. Aramaic is very close to Arabic. Hebrew is also very close to Arabic. So Allah in Arabic. In Hebrew is Ha-Eloh, or it's Elohim. And Allah in Aramaic is Allah. Allah. So Jesus, if he spoke Aramaic, he would say Allah. Okay? So, but we don't know. Why? Because we don't have a book from Jesus that goes back to him. We could just open the book and see, oh, this is Aramaic, or this is Hebrew, or this is Greek, because Greek was the dominant language of the educated classes and of many of the Jews. Okay? But whatever language Jesus gave his da'wah in, the word of God, which we call in his case the gospel, it came in that language. So is Arabic the primal language? And this is a matter that the ulama debate on. And I don't know the answer to that. Arabic is an extremely unique language, an ancient language, a beautiful language. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, urged us to learn Arabic and to teach it because it's good for the intellect. And it's good for muru'ah, it's good for virtue, manliness and womanliness. So, I don't know the answer to your question. Sorry. Sorry. Okay, so we have some questions here. What is the best silent dhikr? Was that you? Okay. Who is the culprit? Anyway, that's a nice question. Again, when we talk about silent dhikr, we talk about dhikr that is completely silent. Some people do dhikr in the heart, and they don't even move their lips. And then we talk about silent dhikr, which is the lips moving, but you can just hear yourself, or barely hear yourself. And you have dhikr that's out loud. Which is the best of that? I don't know. Again, any dhikr that you do, you can do that way. And many people prefer that you do that because it has very good benefits. And of course, if you get involved in loud dhikr, it's very intoxicating, and it's very beautiful, and it's very hard to leave. But sometimes when you leave it, you find tremendous benefit in the humility of the silent dhikr. I don't know that there is a best one, but we could ask people much more knowledgeable than myself and get a good answer. Unfortunately, I have to say, La adri. And I don't know is half of knowledge. It's the one I do best with. So this person says that if we are uncomfortable with the presence of someone, we would give them the impression, unintentionally, by silent looks, that we're uncomfortable with them. Is this also considered a, I can't get this last word. Does the person who wrote this, could they help me?
Yeah.
Okay. A action?
The action of tongue.
And what is this word before it?
A while.
Oh, action of the tongue. How to overcome our facial expressions. Well, I'm not doing very well tonight, but smiling is one of the sunnahs of the Prophet. And many of us, it's difficult for us to smile when we're not actually happy. And some people, like politicians, they can smile all the time. And their smiles can be very hypocritical. Some people smile and they're actually angry. The Russians say, when the wolf shows his teeth, he's not smiling. Some people are like that. They're wolves and they're showing their teeth. So it's very important to smile. And it's very important to have a beautiful facial expression. Sometimes we can't do that. Sometimes we are very affected by the people around us. And that might be justified, it might not be justified. It just depends on the situation. In the case of the fasiq, the person who is corrupt and the person who is harmful, Imam al-Ghazali will talk about that also, that sometimes you're supposed to be stern with them. To be easygoing with a fasiq often encourages them to do what they're doing. So everything has its role and place. And there are some people that it's important to be firm with, and maybe even to frown, because those people will interpret your friendliness as an endorsement of what they're doing. So you encourage them to do that. Everything has a time and a place, and few things are black and white, and we need to appreciate that. But also to be able to conceal what we feel, not in a hypocritical way, and not so that we deceive people, but just to keep our inner feelings to ourselves. That's also a type of spiritual maturity. And this is why also keeping silence, not telling secrets, is very important. Qulubul ahrar, quburul asrar, the hearts of the free. And in Arabic, the word hur or hurra is used for the human being in their most perfect state. So al-hurra takdhib? No. Al-hurra taf'al kadha wa kadha? No. The hurra won't do certain things. She can't. Not because she's free, because she's not free. Because she's bound by principle. So she will be generous, she will be upright, she will be courageous, she will be pure. And the hur is like that too. The hur is not free to do anything. He has no freedom because he is bound by his principles. He is bound by what he knows to be good. So, yet at the same time, it's very important to be able to keep your heart in your heart. And we talk about people who wear their hearts in English. We talk about people who wear their hearts on their sleeves. One of the famous verses in Shakespeare, in Macbeth, is when he talks about the man who wears his, he said, I think he says, I don't wear my heart on my sleeve for daws to peck at, for crows to peck at. Okay, but some people do that. They wear their heart on their sleeves. And that's not a good thing. So again, you don't want to deceive people. But it's very important that maybe you're angry with a person, but do you really have to show that? There's certain times when you should. You might also be extremely happy with people, and sometimes that's a really good thing to show, but sometimes it's not. For example, with children, especially as children grow older, we want to be good to them, we want to be properly firm with them, but sometimes, you don't want to show them how much you are amazed by what they're doing, because it could hurt them. You don't want to be cruel, but again, you want to be balanced. So all of these things, they have their proper measure. Wallahu a'lam. But we ask Allah to enable us to control our emotions, to control our thoughts, and to be able to reveal what is beneficial to people. Bi-idhnillahi ta'ala. I think we have 2 minutes or 3. Bilal.
I have a question about our internal dialogue in reference to being silent, and also in reference of accountability.
Okay, so Brother Bilal is asking about the discourse that goes on within you. You know that happens, don't you? Right? Sometimes you go to bed at night and you can't sleep. And you're not talking. You know, your spouse is sleeping and you're talking in your heart about this person and why did they do that and what are they going to do and what do they intend. And, you know, you have all these things racing through, we say, our mind. We can also say racing through our heart. Because for us, the heart and mind are very closely tied together. So that discourse is an important thing. And it's one of the things it's very important to learn to silence. If your heart tells you good things, things about God, things about truth, good things to do, then listen. And those are khawatir rabbaniya, al-Madania. Those are involuntary suggestions that are coming from God Himself or from the angels. The angels will never put in your heart anything that's not good. And that's why if you're in your prayer and you have all sorts of thoughts coming, it's like, is that coming from the angels? They're not going to break your prayer. You know, that's probably coming from another source. And so to be able to silence the heart is really important. And you can do it. You can. Try it. You can tell your heart, be silent. And see if it obeys, because it's trained to obey you. You're the master. They say that if your heart is talking and your tongue is silent, you'll be safe. But here they mean if your heart is talking, chattering about things it shouldn't be talking about. Right? Like how much I don't like that person that just walked in the room. Maybe I'm going to tell him or her something. Right? So like, don't talk. You'll be safe. But they say that once your tongue is silent, your heart is silent, it's not talking about all these things, then your tongue will speak wisdom. And here, maybe the heart's not really silent, but the heart here is a receptacle of thought and of meaningful discourse. It's pollinating the intellect. The question that our brother's also asking is that, what about these things that go on in the heart? Are we morally responsible for that? And this is one of the things that Imam al-Ghazali, may Allah be pleased with him, talks about in Marvels of the Heart, which is the very beginning of book 3. Al-Ihya is 4 books, or 4 volumes. Usually it's 2 volumes in print, but it's 4 books. And so he talks about these things. So in the heart, you have suggestions, khawatir. And these khawatir could be from God, they could be from the angels, they could be from Satan and the demonic world, and they can be from your nafs. And sometimes they can be very beautiful and very good, and sometimes they can be ugly, even so ugly that they shock us. So you're not responsible for that. That is involuntary. You're responsible for what is voluntary. Voluntary is what is an act of will, that you decide to do it. And that's why people say, I think these terrible thoughts. I'm a terrible person. No, you're not. It may be that you need to eat food of a different type. It may be, you shouldn't eat certain things before you go to bed at night or whatever, but these are suggestions. And maybe there is a door that's open that it would be good to close. But nevertheless, you're not responsible for the suggestion. And the second thing is that you have a spiritual or psychological response to the suggestion. So you don't like it. An evil thought came to your mind. You can't even imagine how you could think that. Well, you didn't. It was a suggestion put in your heart as a test. But then, how do you like that? Do you incline toward it, or you don't incline toward it? So even that is not ethical. It's not unethical either. You're still not responsible, but it might be that you say, hey, that's not such a bad idea. Or, like, let's think about that some more. It might be something really good. So it's good to think about it more. It might be a wonderful suggestion. Like, I could go and study with such and such a good scholar. Okay, so think about that some more. And then you have attachment to that idea. Okay, that you, not just thinking about it, not just inclined towards it, but you're actually attached to it, so that you want to do it. And of course, it might be something really good, and it might be something not good. But even here, you are not responsible, okay, because it's still not clearly a voluntary act. But you're attached to it, you're inclined toward it strongly. And then you have decision. And this is what we call intention. Okay, niyyah, azm, and other things. And that is that I'm going to do this. Or I'm not going to do this. Okay, and that is the beginning of action. إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. So actions are judged by their intentions. And here, the act has begun to be generated. And you may be rewarded for that intention if it's good, and you may not be held responsible for it if it's bad and you don't do it. This is the mercy of God. But nevertheless, you are right now, when the intention is there, you're on the border of action. And this is also where you come into the realm of morality or immorality, good ethics or bad ethics. Allahumma waffiqna lima tuhibbuhu wa tardah, waj'alna min 'abidika as-su'ada, wa amitna 'ala kalimati al-huda, 'allimna ma yanfa'una, wa waffiqna lil-'amali bima 'allamtana bih, waj'al ma nahnu fihi خالصا مخلصا بوجهك الكريم يا رب العالمين. اللهم اجعل تجمعنا هذا تجمعا مرحوما وتفرقنا بعده تفرقا معصوما لا شقيا منا ولا محروما آمين 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 يا رب العالمين. We apologize to the people online. We couldn't start at 7 o'clock because the electricity was off. And we started just a few minutes after the electricity came on. And we hope to see you all tomorrow, bi'idhnillahi ta'ala, and the people online. We are very honored that you follow the classes online. Probably the people online can also send in questions. Is that possible? Yeah, so feel free to do that. Wassalamu alaikum.